What if some of the most vivid experiences of your life are erased almost the instant you open your eyes, not by accident, but by the normal design of your brain? That is the strange reality of dreaming, because for most people, a dream can feel dramatic, emotional, and incredibly detailed one moment, then collapse into scraps or vanish completely within minutes of waking. Scientists have studied this disappearing act for decades, and although the full answer is still not settled, modern sleep research gives us a powerful explanation that begins deep inside the architecture of sleep itself. Across a typical night, the brain cycles through different stages, moving from lighter non-REM sleep into deeper slow-wave sleep and then into REM sleep, the period most strongly associated with vivid, story-like dreams and rapid eye movements. REM sleep does not mean the whole brain is awake, but in important ways, it behaves more like wakefulness than deep sleep, with activated visual and emotional networks generating experiences that can feel immersive, cinematic, and bizarre at the same time. Brain imaging studies found increased activity in regions linked to emotion and internally generated imagery, while parts of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which normally help us test logic, track, and monitor reality, become less active during ordinary REM dreaming. That helps explain a question almost everyone has asked at some point. Why do we calmly accept impossible scenes in dreams, like meeting the dead, flying over cities, or walking through places that change shape while we watch them? In waking life, that frontal system acts like a skeptical editor, but during REM, its reduced control makes dream consciousness feel less analytical and less guarded, which is one reason a dream can seem perfectly believable until the second you wake up. The memory problem starts there, because a convincing experience is not automatically a lasting memory, and the sleeping brain does not record dream material in exactly the same way it records events from waking life. One major clue comes from neurochemistry. During REM sleep, the locus coeruleus, a major source of norepinephrine for the cortex, falls largely silent, and that matters because norepinephrine is deeply involved in attention, salience, and the conditions that help memories stabilize. When that chemical setting drops, the brain can still generate rich experiences, but it may be less prepared to tag those experiences as durable episodes worth preserving after awakening. Researchers also know that the relationship between sleep and memory is not simple, because different sleep stages support different forms of processing, and the best studied pathway for transferring episodic information from the hippocampus toward long-term cortical storage is especially linked to slow-wave sleep, spindles, and ripples, rather than ordinary waking-style capture inside REM. During slow-wave sleep, the hippocampus repeatedly reactivates recent waking information in dialogue with the cortex, which is one reason many neuroscientists think sleep helps strengthen real memories, even as dream memories themselves remain surprisingly unstable. REM seems to contribute differently, supporting plasticity and emotional processing, but without giving dream content the same reliable path into later recall that a meaningful conversation, a shocking image, or a real-world event might receive while you are awake. That difference between experiencing and encoding is easy to miss, because subjectively, a dream can feel as real as waking life, yet the neural conditions required to preserve it are not fully in place. In other words, REM may be excellent for constructing dream experience, emotional tone, and unusual associations, while being relatively poor at locking that whole experience into the kind of stable narrative memory you can retrieve later at breakfast. This is why many sleep researchers describe dreams as fragile products of a brain state that is astonishingly creative in the moment, but notoriously inefficient at long-term storage once the state is over. Another important factor is timing, because the ability to remember a dream depends heavily on whether you wake up during or immediately after a period when dream-related networks are active. Studies using awakenings from sleep show that dream recall becomes much more likely when people are interrupted out of REM, and electrophysiological work suggests that specific patterns of cortical activation just before awakening can predict whether a report will be remembered or lost. In laboratory settings, when sleepers are awakened and asked for an immediate report, researchers often capture coherent dream narratives that would probably have disappeared if the person had been allowed to drift for even a short time. That is one reason morning recall can be misleading, because the absence of a remembered dream does not prove the absence of dreaming. It may simply reflect that the memory trace was never stabilized enough to survive the transition. That finding is crucial because it tells us forgetting is not simply about having no dream at all. It is often about failing to catch the dream during a very narrow window before waking cognition takes over. And waking cognition arrives fast. The instant you orient to the room, your phone, the light, the day ahead, your brain is flooded with new sensory input, new goals, and new demands that compete with the weak trace of the dream. Even small actions matter, which is why dream researchers often recommend staying still for a few seconds after waking and mentally replaying the dream before reaching for anything in the physical environment. Some researchers frame this as interference, meaning the fragile memory of the dream is quickly overwritten or crowded out by the brain's urgent shift into externally focused, goal-directed wakefulness. That idea also fits everyday experience, because the dreams people remember best are often the ones they catch before moving, before checking the time, before speaking, and before the ordinary world begins replacing the private one that existed a moment earlier. So if you have ever felt a dream dissolve while you were still trying to hold it, you were not being careless. You were watching a vulnerable memory lose a race against the return of the waking brain. There is another fascinating wrinkle, because dreaming is not limited to REM sleep alone, and modern high-density EEG studies show that conscious experiences can arise in non-REM sleep as well, although the texture and recall profile may differ. This broader view changed dream science, because older theories treated REM and dreaming as almost interchangeable, whereas newer work shows that consciousness during sleep is more flexible and depends on local patterns of brain activation rather than a single stage label. That matters because it corrects a common myth. REM is the stage most strongly associated with vivid dream recall, but it is not the only stage in which the sleeping mind can generate experience. What changes most reliably is not simply whether experience exists, but whether the brain is in a state that allows that experience to be reported once consciousness reconnects to the external world. This is also why lucid dreaming is so interesting to neuroscientists, because a lucid dreamer becomes aware that the dream is a dream while still asleep, and that partial recovery of insight appears to recruit more reflective brain functions than ordinary dreaming does. In lucid dreams, that extra layer of awareness can restore some self-reflection, which is why lucid dreamers are more likely to notice that gravity has stopped making sense, or that a dead relative should not be standing in the room. People who practice lucid dreaming often report better dream recall overall, not because they have discovered magic, but because their attention is trained toward dreams. Their awakenings are used more strategically, and their intention to remember is deliberately strengthened. Among the best studied methods is mild or mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, often combined with waking up after several hours of sleep and then returning to bed, a protocol that has shown promising results in sleep laboratory and field studies. Keeping a dream journal by the bed can help too, mainly because writing immediately after waking captures details before interference builds, and over time it also trains the mind to treat dreams as something worth noticing rather than something disposable. The point is not that these practices guarantee recall, because no technique works perfectly for everyone, but they do increase the odds that a dream survives long enough to be converted into a reportable memory. Reality checks during the day are also used in lucid dream practice, although the evidence for them is mixed compared with stronger support for intention-based methods and wake-back-to-bed timing. Then, there is the deeper evolutionary question. Why would a brain capable of producing such intense inner worlds fail to preserve most of them, and could forgetting actually serve a function? No single answer has one, but one reasonable possibility is that a brain built to navigate reality benefits from not storing every internally generated simulation with the same priority as waking events, because confusion between imagined and real experience would be costly. That is still a hypothesis, not a final conclusion, but it fits a basic principle of brain economy. Memory is selective, and storing everything with equal strength would not be efficient or even safe. At the very least, the evidence suggests the brain is selective, preserving what supports waking adaptation and letting most dream content fade unless timing, attention, and brain state align in just the right way. So the next time you wake from a powerful dream and feel it slipping away, ask yourself this: are you losing something meaningless, or are you witnessing the price the brain pays to keep the real world clear, stable, and survivable?